I'm Montse Alvarado. Tonight on EWTN News Nightly, the light of the world. We bring you the latest from the Jubilee of Youth in Rome with team coverage. Making waves. Millions remain under tsunami advisories following a massive earthquake. We have the latest. A time for healing. Hear what Pope Leo tells the faithful about communicating with others. And a summer tradition. Learn all about how thousands of faithful come together every year in a New York community. These stories and more tonight.
From EWTN, the Global Catholic Network, this is EWTN News Nightly.
Thank you for being with us for this 1-hour special of EWTN News Nightly on the feast of St. Peter Chrysologus. Our top story tonight, the Jubilee of Youth is in full swing today. An event in Rome focused on the church in the United States, the National U.S. Pilgrim Gathering, organized by the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops with the support of the Knights of Columbus.
Glory be to the Father, glory be to the Son, glory be to the Spirit, God is three in one.
Hope does not disappoint.
Ora pro nobis, ora pro nobis.
Where is Nero's successor? Nowhere. There is no successor to Nero. Where are the mighty signs of Roman power? Think of the Colosseum, think of the Forum, think of the Palatine Hill, think of the Circus Maximus. What are they? They're ruins. They've turned to dust. But where's the great empire that was announced by Peter the Apostle? It's all over the world, on every continent. It's alive. And where is the successor of Peter, who was put to death in the Circus of Nero and buried away on the Vatican Hill? Where's his successor? I saw him last night, didn't you? Riding around St. Peter's Square.
Our time together today will have more coverage of the Jubilee throughout the program, so be sure to stick around this evening and watch our upcoming coverage on Friday. Remember, follow the Jubilee of Youth here on EWTN. Check EWTN.com for times and listings to watch our special reports and more live coverage with Catherine Hadro and Father Aquinas. And now to global news. Outside the Vatican, a major correction for one of the nation's biggest legacy newspapers. The New York Times issued a correction after showing an emaciated child displayed on its front page as evidence of famine in Gaza. The paper issued an editor's note saying the child is suffering from a grim pre-existing condition unrelated to the conflict with Israel. The original caption on the photo noted that the boy was born healthy. Meanwhile, the Israel-Hamas war in Gaza rages on, and you can see here large crowds collecting aid. This after days of intensified international pressure on Israel to increase the flow of aid into the Gaza Strip. The Integrated Food Security Phase Classification, a global partnership on food security and malnutrition, claims the worst-case scenario of famine is playing out in Gaza. Maddie Friedman, author of the Aleppo Codex and journalist for the Free Press, joins us now from Jerusalem to talk more about the situation in Gaza. Maddie, thank you so much for being with us. You just wrote a piece that named the media coverage of the situation in Gaza an information war. And you focus on an event that happened just a few weeks after the horrific October 7th attack 2 years ago. Tell us about that moment.
That was a reference to an attack or a supposed attack on a hospital in Gaza called the El Ahli Hospital. The war was quite new at the time. Of course, we were kind of reeling from what had happened on October 7th, which was this attack across the Israeli border that killed 1,200 people in Israel and took 250 hostages. And a few weeks later, there was an attack that was reported globally on a hospital in Gaza. There's a front page headline in the New York Times saying that more than killed by Israel at this hospital. And the story was fake. The hospital was intact. A Palestinian rocket had landed nearby. But the story was not as it had been reported. And it was a good reminder for many of us here that a lot of the information coming out of Gaza is part of an information war that's designed to sway public opinion globally in order to tie Israel's hands and make it easier for Israel's opponents to win. It's been going on for years and years. I was a reporter for the AP, the Associated Press, about 15 years ago, and saw it almost on a daily basis. I think many news consumers in the West are still a bit naive about it. That's not to say that there isn't a real humanitarian crisis. That isn't to say that civilians are not being harmed. In many cases, they are. But stories reported from here need to be taken often with a grain of salt, and almost no information that comes out of Gaza can be taken at face value.
Now, President Trump did go ahead and say that he was going to send aid and that he only trusted Israeli forces to distribute that aid. Do you have an update on that at all, whether that will happen and maybe alleviate this crisis in one way or another?
I haven't heard any new developments on the American aid plan. What I do know from people who are involved in this directly is that the problem is not primarily that there is not enough aid inside the Gaza Strip. So even a week ago, when the headlines about an impending famine really crescendoed, there were incredible photographs of hundreds and hundreds of pallets of food waiting inside Gaza. The problem is distribution inside the Gaza Strip. So it's not enough to get food to Gaza. You need to be able to get it to people who are hungry, and that is very difficult because Gaza is an active war zone. Swaths of the territory are destroyed. Hamas has fought this war from behind civilians and from under civilians. Hamas fighters are indistinguishable from civilians, so it makes it very tricky for the Israeli army to know who's who. And the society in Gaza, I think it's fair to say, is in a state of advanced collapse after 2 years of war, with Hamas refusing to surrender and refusing to return the hostages. So getting the aid from the entry points to the smaller distribution points is very, very tricky. When the trucks go in, they often get looted on the way to where they're going, not necessarily by malevolent actors or by terrorists, but by hungry people who see a truck of food driving by their house and they decide to loot the truck. There's a tremendous food insecurity in Gaza. Even if there isn't mass starvation, there's definitely food insecurity, there's malnutrition, and there are people who are hungry. And in that state of affairs, it's very difficult to move aid around. What we're seeing now is Gaza being flooded with aid dropped from the air, brought in through the entry points. The Israeli army has declared essentially unilateral ceasefires, which they're calling humanitarian pauses, basically a 10-hour pause in fighting so that the aid trucks can get in and get people fed. It is being addressed. I think our government made a huge mistake in the way they've dealt with it. They should have seen this coming a long time ago. They should never have allowed it to reach this point. The fact that we're fighting incredibly cynical terrorists like Hamas, people who have no concern whatsoever for the welfare of their own civilians, in fact, who see the suffering of their civilians as a weapon. That's just a fact of this war. We can't expect Hamas to have mercy on their own civilians. We are going to have to do it. Israel's going to have to decide how far it wants to push this and when it needs to stop. And I think that our government really miscalculated in that regard. And we're seeing the effects right now.
Just your last thought. You seem very clear-eyed about both the virtues and the failings of this war. Do you think that there is an end in sight or possible permanent ceasefire?
I think there is. I think it's quite clear that the Israeli leadership thought there would be a ceasefire about 3 or 4 weeks ago after the Iran war was wrapped up and Netanyahu came to Washington, met with President Trump, and we had the contours of a ceasefire that everyone assumed was about to happen. By the way, I think that's part of what happened with the aid here. One of the reasons that it wasn't taken seriously as a problem that was about to become acute is that people assumed about a month ago that the war would be wrapped up, at least for a while, and that didn't happen, in part because Hamas walked away from the talks, and that happened in part because they felt that their international position has been strengthened when the headlines again kind of came to a crescendo on Friday about famine in Gaza. Hamas was empowered and they walked away from the ceasefire talks in Qatar. So I think the Israeli leadership understands that in the cost benefit analysis, Israel is losing much more in this war than it's gaining.
Well, we look forward to more updates and, of course, peace and the return of the hostages. Thank you so much for your time, Maddie.
Thank you again for having me.
The University of California, Los Angeles has agreed to pay $6 million to settle a lawsuit brought by Jewish students and faculty members. The suit was brought last year by the Becket Fund for Religious Liberty over the school's handling of anti-Israel protests, including allowing protesters to ban Jews from accessing a part of the campus known as a Jew exclusion zone. Mark Rienzi, president of Becket and an attorney for the students involved in the case, said in part, quote, UCLA should be commended for accepting judgment against that misbehavior and setting the precedent that allowing mistreatment of Jews violates the Constitution and civil rights laws. Joining us now to break this down is Jordan Vanberg, attorney with the Becket Fund for Religious Liberty. Jordan, it's great to see you first. Congratulations on this big win. What is your reaction to the settlement? Will this set a precedent for other schools to follow?
It certainly does. We're thrilled with the settlement. Our clients are thrilled with the settlement. What the settlement guarantees is that UCLA is now subject to a permanent court order, which makes clear that it cannot continue to facilitate the exclusion of Jewish students on its own campus. Just watching these videos again for me is frankly harrowing. It's shocking to me that litigation was even necessary to reestablish the constitutional principle that you cannot exclude Jews from portions of a public campus. So ultimately, we're very grateful for the court's entry of judgment today. And we're also grateful for the significant funds that compensate my clients and fund Jewish charities that serve the community.
And do you believe that UCLA has made a commitment to ensure this never happens again? Is there any way to guarantee that?
Even if they don't make the commitment, they have to, because they're subject to a court order requiring them to do that. They didn't really do anything to protect Jewish students on their campus until the federal judge in our case, based in Los Angeles, entered an injunction over the past summer requiring them not to facilitate discrimination on their own campus. So the reality is they're subject to a court order, and we're very glad they are.
Now, what could this actually mean for colleges around the country moving forward? This isn't the only place that had those kinds of zones or was facing anti-Semitic rhetoric from protesters.
Yeah, this case sets precedent that will be very useful in future cases when colleges and universities fail to protect their Jewish students. It shows that when you fail to do that, you can be subject to a court judgment recognizing claims under the U.S. Constitution, under Title VI, under the KKK Act. So I think it sets a very strong precedent. This kind of misbehavior will not be tolerated.
And when you think about why other people should care about this big win for those Jewish students and faculty, why should anyone else care about the religious freedom of the Jewish community?
Yeah, an attack on anyone's religious freedom is an attack on everyone's religious freedom, in my opinion. I mean, this precedent protects any religious group from being excluded from a public space. We think that's absolutely the correct rule, and it's honestly amazing that we had to litigate to establish it.
Well, Jordan, congratulations again, and please thank everyone at the Becket Fund for their courageous work.
Of course, thanks very much.
The Trump administration issues new measures to protect religious freedom in the workplace. The guidelines are from the U.S. Office of Personnel Management. The guidance is meant to clarify religious liberty protections guaranteed in the First Amendment and enshrined in federal law. It includes the ability of federal employees to display religious imagery on their desks, a security guard being able to display a crucifix, and a doctor praying over his or her patient for recovery. Joining us now to talk a little more about this is Stephanie Taub, Senior Counsel at First Liberty Institute. Stephanie, thank you for joining us. Now, is this new guidance revolutionary for federal workers? What's new and different about it?
Yes, so this new guidance is very encouraging. It aligns the federal standards with Title VII, which is federal employment discrimination law. So Title VII applies to both government employers and also private employers. It provides that employers are required to provide religious accommodations unless doing so would cause undue hardship. And so here, the government is taking the position that personal religious expression by federal employees must be protected to the greatest extent possible unless that expression would impose undue hardship on the business. So we're very encouraged by this, and it should be helpful for protecting the religious liberty rights of federal employees.
Now, how do you define that term you just used, undue hardship? What does that mean?
Well, First Liberty Institute won a Supreme Court case that decided or clarified what that term actually means. So undue hardship means substantial increased costs to the business. So if your religious accommodation requests, such as having a Bible on your desk or wearing a cross or engaging in conversations around the water cooler, if those sorts of religious activities don't rise to the level of substantial increased cost to the company, then your employer is required to accommodate that.
Now, you're talking about that in terms of a company. How does that then apply to the federal government? How is it different for the government?
Right. So in past years, we've seen federal workplaces think that they have to censor any mention of religion or prevent even your having a Bible on your desk or things like that. And so this guidance is correcting that misunderstanding that the First Amendment doesn't require you to censor personal religious expression. So if you can engage in personal expression about other topics during at the water cooler, during off hours, during times when that sorts of expression is allowed. If you can talk about other topics, you can also talk about religion.
A lot of people use the separation of church and state, that phrase, thinking that it exists in the Constitution as an excuse to stop people from practicing their faith. Is that actually in the Constitution?
No, that's not actually in the Constitution, and it was meant to protect or encourage the church, that the government was not going to invade the church, and that's how it was originally used in a letter from Thomas Jefferson. And so here we have, so this sort of guideline is really restoring and correcting some of those misunderstandings, that religion shouldn't be singled out for disfavor or for censorship, that you do have rights to personal religious expression at work.
Really quickly, is there anything more that can be done to move religious freedom forward from this administration?
Absolutely. We know there's still quite a few areas where the law might not be as clear. So at First Liberty, we have many cases defending employees of faith who have been fired or who face discipline because of their religious beliefs. And so you can follow those cases at firstliberty.org.
Thank you so much, Stephanie Taub, Senior Counsel at First Liberty. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Officials say the tsunami threat is subsiding in many places. This includes the U.S., Japan, and parts of Russia. The warnings were in place after an 8.8 magnitude quake off of Russia's far east coast sent waves across the Pacific, reaching the U.S. west coast. Meanwhile, authorities in the coastal areas of Peru are urging their residents to evacuate. Chile has upgraded its warning to the highest level for most of its coast. Hundreds of people are being evacuated there. There's a new national advisory for the coastal areas of New Zealand as well. As for the United States, tsunami advisories have been canceled for coastal Washington, Oregon, Hawaii, and much of California. And take a look at this video. A team of doctors in Russia were in the middle of surgery when the earthquake struck. The doctors remained calm and stayed with the patient until the end. Officials say the surgeons will be nominated for state awards. Syria's foreign minister is set to visit Russia. It's the first official visit by a Syrian official since former President Bashar Assad was ousted last year. EWTN contributor Ambassador Alberto Fernandez and longtime diplomat in the Middle East says the meetings are part of a practical approach from Damascus.
The visit of the Syrian foreign minister to Moscow is significant. I would be careful about exaggerating its importance, but the reality is that Syria today is destitute, it's poverty-stricken. It needs support and allies wherever they can find them. Before the Assad regime fell, Russia provided all the oil and wheat and even printed the currency that Syria used today.
We have a lot more still to come on EWTN News Nightly, including On the Money, promising news on the economy from the Trump administration, and what the head of the Archdiocese of New York is saying about the deadly shooting in Manhattan. President Donald Trump celebrates new economic numbers just out today, revealing strong growth that beat economists' expectations. White House correspondent Owen Jensen helps put it in perspective.
Well, good evening. Talking about the very latest GDP numbers, gross domestic product. That's the nation's output of goods and services. And tonight, President Donald Trump and his economic team liking what they see.
We have no inflation. We have nothing but cash coming in. The world respects us again. We're a really great, proud country.
Fresh back from Scotland, President Donald Trump posts on Truth Social that the second quarter GDP of 3% is way better than expected, adding the Federal Reserve Chair, who he calls too late, must now lower the rate. No inflation. Let people buy and refinance their homes. On the North Lawn, the director of the White House National Economic Council tells reporters,
yeah, it's really one of the best GDP announcemements or releases that you could imagine.
Kevin Hassett said there's blockbuster growth, way above expectation.
And there's also a real almost collapse in inflation. It went down by about 1.5% all the way down to 2.1%, which is the Fed's target.
Some economists had expected 2% second quarter growth. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt writes, Americans trust in President Trump's America First economic agenda that continues to prove the so-called experts wrong. The RNC adds, the wins are so undeniable, even the fake news media has to admit it. Consumer confidence is up for the 7th month in a row because Americans can trust in President Trump's economy. His economy, including imposing tariffs while trying to open up trade. Today, President Trump, who says the U.S. has a massive trade deficit with India, announces a new tariff on that nation's imported goods. And he complains about India's connection to Russia. At a time when everyone wants Russia to stop the killing in Ukraine, all things not good, India will therefore be paying a tariff of 25%, plus a penalty for the above, starting on August 1st.
As you know, Prime Minister Modi's a friend of mine, but they don't do very much business in terms of business with us. They sell a lot to us, but we don't buy from them. You know why? Because the tariff is so high. They have one of the highest tariffs in the world. Now, they're willing to cut it very substantially, but we'll see what happens. We're talking to India now. We'll see what happens.
But one governor fears what reciprocal tariffs could do.
Because when you're making things here for export, there's always a reciprocal tariff. The other country puts one on us, and so a lot of manufacturing is going to move overseas. I've already heard from companies here saying we're not going to build a factory in Colorado. We're going to build it overseas because we can't pay the tariffs on all the parts and materials that we need to make our product.
Also tonight, interest rates. President Trump time and again has emphasized he wants to see the Fed lower interest rates. But today the Fed didn't budge, leaving them unchanged for now. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
Authorities say a 27-year-old man who killed 4 people at a Manhattan office building purchased his rifle from his former boss. Shane Tamura got the AR-15 style rifle from his supervisor at the Horseshoe Las Vegas casino. It's unclear if the sale was legal. The gunman was killed as he unsuccessfully targeted the NFL offices. Cardinal Timothy Dolan also weighed in on the tragedy, just a few blocks from St. Patrick's Cathedral. In a statement, Cardinal Dolan says in part, quote, "We're heartbroken by the loss of life. Those victims, those who were injured, and their families are in our thoughts and prayers. We should never get used to violence." Up next on EWTN News Nightly, fight for the unborn. More than 30 Planned Parenthood facilities are closing, what it means for the future of abortion in America. A new report says this year alone, more than 30 Planned Parenthood facilities have announced their closing. An article in National Review Online says the 33 closures are in a wide range of states. This includes 6 abortion facilities closing in California, plus 4 in Michigan and 3 in Texas, including a so-called mega center in Houston. In their 2009-2010 annual report, Planned Parenthood said they had 840 facilities. According to their most recent numbers from 2023, that number is now around 600. For more, we turn to a panel of experts. Michael New, Assistant Professor of Practice at the Bush School of Business at the Catholic University of America and a Senior Associate Scholar at the Charlotte Lozier Institute. And we're also joined by Kelsey Pritchard, Director of State Public Affairs at SBA Pro-Life America. It's great to have both of you on. Michael, I'll start with you. The 30 Planned Parenthood facilities that announced their closing. Put this into context for us. Is this the most we've seen in a year in recent memory?
It's certainly the most we've seen in like a 6-month time span. I mean, the main thing driving the closures is the fact that we succeeded getting Planned Parenthood funding. President Trump signed a budget that cut federal funding for Planned Parenthood. They're going to lose about $500 million in terms of federal funding. That's about 25% of their budget. So it's really no surprise that all these facilities are closing.
Now, Kelsey, talk about this from a political perspective. SBA has some serious efforts at the state level. What does this mean for the fight for the unborn?
I mean, this is really the hugest pro-life victory since the Dobbs decision. We have a judge, an activist judge, that is holding up this defunding measure from taking effect, and yet at the same time, we still have these Planned Parenthoods that are shutting, more than 30 of them. And Planned Parenthood themselves say that up to 200 of their facilities could close in this country. So this is huge. It's a huge win for the unborn, a huge win against the crooked abortion industry that takes lives and harms women.
Now, Michael, give us some context on the reasons for the closures. What's happening here? What's creating this environment?
Well, again, one thing I've always said is that, big abortion needs big government. And Planned Parenthood consistently gets almost about 40% of the revenue from various governments and about 25% from the federal government. So they get a lot of Medicaid money. Again, the budget that President Trump signed cuts that off. There is some legal action underway, but I'm confident pro-lifers will prevail. And I think they realize that too. I mean, the reason why they're closing these clinics is because they know the federal funding is going to dry up at some point. The judge may have delayed that, but I think in the long run they'll lose funding, and that really explains why they're closing down these clinics.
They just can't afford to keep them open. Well, Kelsey, abortion advocates say the closures are not a big deal because so many women are relying on telehealth and medical abortions in the mail. How do you respond to that?
Yeah, it's clear that Planned Parenthood has plans to shift their business model. And of course, this is a big concern with the way that mail order abortion happens in this country, with how a woman doesn't even have to see a doctor anymore. And she can be mailed abortion pills through these blue states that have shield laws that protect these abortion pill mills over the women and girls who are being harmed in other states and unborn children who are being killed. So yes, there's a concern. This is a step in the pro-life movement. We're not even close to done with our work. And so we all need to continue in the way that God is calling each of us to continue the fight for life and the fight for women in this country.
Now, Michael, we're following another pro-life story. Kristen Hawkins from Students for Life of America is calling for the immediate removal of the Senate parliamentarian. This comes after the unelected official pushed against the efforts to remove taxpayer funding from Planned Parenthood. You just mentioned the impact of that funding. Is this possible? Can the Senate parliamentarian be removed?
Sure. I mean, the parliamentarian serves at the pleasure of the Senate. We're not entirely sure what happened, but the original plan was to defund Planned Parenthood for 10 years. We think it was a ruling of the parliamentarian that limited that defunding for only 1 year. And that is an important pro-life victory. I mean, we've never succeeded in defunding Planned Parenthood at the federal level before. So it is a win. But again, the parliamentarian serves at the pleasure of the Senate. She can't be removed.
Well, it's something that we'll be watching closely. Michael and Kelsey, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. God bless.
This week marks the 6-month anniversary of the deadly midair collision over Reagan Airport outside the nation's capital. The National Transportation Safety Board is seeking answers about the deadly crash between an American Eagle jet and an Army Black Hawk helicopter. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales joins us with more.
Good evening, Monse. The goal is to pinpoint exactly what went wrong and how to avoid a similar midair crash. Experts say the airspace around Reagan National Airport is very unique because it's widely used by both commercial and military aircraft. The hearing opened with video showing how the military helicopter flew above the 200-foot altitude limit and right into the path of the landing American Airlines jet.
Flight 5342 is visible in the upper left corner as it approaches runway 33. Pat 25 appears from the left side of the screen, moving to the right as the two aircraft cross flight paths.
Investigators said the flight data recorder showed the helicopter was actually 80 feet higher than its altitude limit. Witnesses testified that tests on 3 other helicopters from the same unit gave the same false readings. The altimeters were built more than 50 years ago.
Present day, of course, with advanced equipment, air data computers give you more of an option. But again, 1970s, late 70s, that was not available, and the government requirements specifically called out the altimeter to be used.
An Army helicopter pilot testified that altimeters are tested before each flight for accuracy. But if it's wrong and you're unfamiliar with the terrain, determining your actual altitude can be difficult.
Visually looking out the window between flying at 200 feet versus 300 feet, is there enough of a difference at those altitudes?
Yeah, that's a difficult question to answer. I'm not sure if you'd be able to resolve that difference.
I agree. I don't know that I could 100% accurately determine the difference in altitude.
They add wearing night vision goggles makes it even more difficult. Senator Ted Cruz has introduced legislation that would require all aircraft, commercial and military, be updated with new technology.
This technology allows aircraft to broadcast their positions and to receive positions of others in real time, faster than other technology in use today. It gives pilots and air traffic control a clear view of what is happening in the skies.
One Army expert testified he would take the entire helicopter fleet offline until the new technology is installed. The hearing will continue over the next 2 days. The final NTSB report won't be released until sometime next year. At the Capitol, Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
We have a lot more still ahead on EWTN News Nightly, including In the Clear. Good news for a popular priest who faced some serious allegations. And in his first Wednesday audience since taking his summer break, Pope Leo addresses violence done against the church and what he says we all must do to bring about more healing. New developments tonight in a story involving a Catholic priest, best-selling author, and host of a popular podcast on exorcisms. Father Carlos Martins is cleared of all charges stemming from a relic exposition last year in Illinois. The incident took place in a crowded church in front of many witnesses. His attorney says Father Martins' character and vocation were wrongly called into question, and, quote, "We're glad the justice system corrected the mistake." Father Martins is the host of the Exorcist Files podcast. And now to the Vatican, where Pope Leo is calling for a renewed commitment to diplomacy to resolve conflicts. The Holy Father made the remarks during his weekly meeting with pilgrims at the Vatican. It comes just days before the 50th anniversary of an agreement signed during the Cold War. The Helsinki Accords ushered in a new era of security and human rights. Also at the general audience, Pope Leo encouraged the faithful to open our hearts to God's healing love.
Chiudersi, infatti, non è mai una soluzione.
Father decried the deadly attack on a church in the Democratic Republic of Congo and stressed that we live in a time that needs a lot of healing. Speaking about the healing of the deaf man in the gospel, Pope Leo said we must allow a profound encounter with Jesus to heal our hearts and help us become bearers of his message of salvation. Still ahead on EWTN News Nightly, All One in Christ. A look at the special Mass celebrated for pilgrims at the Jubilee for Youth. The Jubilee of Youth is in full swing, attracting hundreds of thousands of young people from all over the globe. And though the church is spread out throughout the world, we're always gathered together in Christ. As EWTN's Benedict Sierregren reports, that's just how the Jubilee kicked off. The youth of the church gathering together before Christ in the holy sacrament of the altar.
My dear friends, I welcome you on behalf of Pope Leo XIV.
Archbishop Rino Fisichella, the pro-prefect of the Dicastery for Evangelization, which has been responsible for organizing this major Jubilee event, welcomed the thousands of young pilgrims gathered in St. Peter's Square last night for the opening Mass.
Many among you have made many sacrifices to be here in Rome. The Lord will not disappoint you. He comes to meet you. Remain vigilant so that you may recognize His presence in your life.
The Holy Mass marked the kickoff of the Jubilee for Youth, bringing together over 120,000 young pilgrims from around the world to the heart of the Church for a week of fellowship, prayer, catechesis, and joyful witness to the faith. For some, the Jubilee is bringing back memories of World Youth Day, and many are excited to create new ones with newfound friends and fellow pilgrims.
2 years ago, we visited the World Youth Day in Lisbon and made such a great experience. And we get new youth in our parish, and we want to take them to experience with God, with a big community. Yeah.
Just seeing this many young people being here celebrating our faith just amazes me. That's what I came here for.
Participating in the Jubilee, the young pilgrims explained, is a way to bear witness to their faith and to show a world in crisis the message of peace and hope that Christ brings.
In the societies we live in, there is a lot of fear, a lot of misunderstanding, many people who don't really know where we're headed. Well, this gives a kind of breath of fresh air and hope. Since it's broadcast on all sorts of TV channels, it allows everyone in the world to see something of the faith that drives us, and the message of hope that Christ gives us, that Christ is alive, the Church is alive, and that heaven begins here, in a way.
We wanted to show how important Jesus Christ is for us and how much we believe in His help in our life. And I think every one of us see His help in our lives. And we also want to ask Him for the continuation of this help, but also thank Him for what He has done for us.
At the end of Holy Mass, Pope Leo made a surprise appearance to greet the overjoyed pilgrims.
You are the light of the world!
He reminded them that they are the salt of the earth, the light of the world, and that their cries, all of them for Jesus Christ, will be heard to the ends of the earth. After the blessing, the Holy Father wished the young pilgrims a good week in Rome and invited them to gather again this weekend for the vigil and Mass of the Jubilee of Youth, saying, "See you in Tor Vergata."
Ci vediamo! Ci troviamo a Tor Vergata! Buona settimana!
In Rome, Benedictia de Grian, EWTN News Nightly.
The Jubilee has much in store for all those who are participating. EWTN's Caitlin Shaw takes a look at what they'll do, where they'll go, and what they'll get to take home.
From a night of worship and testimony sharing to a morning Mass with the Pope, all young people around the world are invited to Rome to celebrate the Jubilee of Youth. This is the longest and largest Jubilee celebration happening, lasting for 5 days with over 1 million people in attendance. Just next to St. Peter's Square, the Dicastery for Evangelization has set up the Youth Info Point, the heart of logistics and hospitality. Behind the scenes, volunteers like Zimmy from Portugal are helping young people from around the world feel welcome as they arrive in Rome for the Jubilee of Youth. Why are you passionate about helping people the way that you do?
If you look around and if you come to the info point, you'll see that we have Polish, Spanish, French, English, Portuguese, and Italian. So we're trying to be as accommodative as possible for everyone. And as I speak Portuguese, it made sense for me to come to the help desk.
Have you ever met the Pope?
We've seen him. We've seen him really close sometimes. We are so close to him, spiritually at least. Like when we are helping with these ceremonies, it's like we are bringing Christ to others. You feel like you're bringing Christ to others, which is such a big responsibility, but such a huge privilege as well, which in the end just ends filling me up with joy.
Zemi also revealed to me the Jubilee kits they have prepared for young pilgrims who are traveling to Rome. The kits include one green shirt, one white shirt, a water bottle, a bandana, a lanyard, a rosary bracelet, and a Jubilee hat. Packed with activities, the Jubilee of Youth will include masses, concerts, and time for confession and the pilgrimage to meet with the Holy Father at Tor Vergata. The upcoming meeting with Pope Leo at Tor Vergata will mark his first major gathering with young people since the start of his pontificate. Many people are expected to attend this Jubilee of Youth. At a press conference, Monsignor Graziano Borgonovo, Undersecretary of the Dicastery of Evangelization, announced that Rome is preparing for 1 million young people to attend the Jubilee of Youth with events planned across the entire city.
There will be various moments, also located in various squares of the city, as well as here in the Vatican area, waiting for the vigil on Saturday, August 2nd, and the final Mass with the Holy Father, who will also be present at the vigil on Sunday, August 3rd, in Tor Vergata.
Pope Leo has won the hearts of young people from the moment of his election. After the white smoke appeared, many youths gathered in St. Peter's Square to greet the new pope.
Do you know about the Jubilee of Youth? I think it's really awesome that the church is looking to be more with the youth and to be more with them and accommodate to the new necessities of the youngest people of the church, so that they can follow more and not think like the church is something old and past just for like old people, but it's something new and it's changing and it's evolving for us, and I think it's awesome that they can do that.
Known for his closeness to young people, Pope Leo has made the outreach to youth a hallmark of his pontificate.
My dear friends,
delivering a video message to many Americans at Wright Field, home of the Chicago White Sox, Pope Leo urged them to be protagonists of a future rooted in faith and love.
hope does not disappoint, St. Paul tells us in his letter to the Romans. When I see each and every one of you, when I see how people gather together to celebrate their faith, I discover myself how much hope there is in the world.
Among the many participants coming to Rome for the Jubilee of Youth is Adam Bates. He will be traveling with several other college students to Rome to participate in a Holy Mass with the new Pope. Adam, so you are a student traveling from the U.S. and you're coming to Rome. Why did you want to come to the Jubilee of Youth?
I'd always wanted to go to Rome, especially the past 5 years or so as I've gotten more interested in the faith. I want to go see St. Peter's and see all the beautiful churches and everything there, all the holy sites.
Why are you excited to see the Pope or potentially meet him? What's exciting about that for you?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the first American Pope, that's exciting in and of itself. Any Pope I would be happy to meet just because, again, the successor of St. Peter. So if Pope Francis is still alive, I would have loved to see him and meet him. But now Pope Leo, an American, what a great opportunity.
Since the last Jubilee in 2000, this generation of youth is now getting an opportunity to celebrate their faith and travel to Rome for the Jubilee of Hope 2025. As you can see, this next generation is inspiring all of us to deepen our faith and connect with our communities like never before. I'm Caitlin Shaw in Rome for EWTN News.
And coming up next, a Sunday Mass on the beach, an initiative that combines vacations and Mass. An initiative on Long Island in New York combines summer beach vacations with Sunday Mass. Beach Catholic is a collaboration of 3 parishes that combine to celebrate a Sunday Mass in the sand and sea. Now in its 11th year, the movement draws hundreds of faithful to Mass every Sunday in the summer in Long Beach, New York. One parishioner says the setting is a reminder of the beauty of God that surrounds us. Amid concerns over wearing flip-flops or beach attire to Mass, the idea of Mass at a beach can be off-putting to many Catholics. The Long Island clergy and faithful say maintaining reverence at the beach service is a major consideration, and that the Masses are fully approved by their ordinary. For more, we're joined by Father Brian Barr, a priest in the Diocese of Rockville Centre, New York, and one of the celebrants of the Beach Catholic Sunday Masses. Father Brian, thank you so much for being with us. How did this and why did this initiative start?
Thanks. Well, it started about, about 11 years ago. I became pastor down here in Long Beach just about 2 weeks before Hurricane Sandy hit and kind of devastated the area. And then, as a result of that, we kind of came together, I'd say in kind of unique ways. The community, the parish community, started meeting up with groups of people from the parish, kind of in a social context, kind of like wine and cheese party type thing. And where I was able to just ask people questions and they were able to kind of, talk about the parish and what they thought the parish needed and changes and pluses and minuses. And from that, I actually just asked, we live 4 blocks from the ocean. And I had asked, do we ever have Mass on the beach? And people said, not really. I mean, they didn't really have any memory of it. Once a year, the school would have a Mass in September, but nothing on a regular basis. So I said, what would you think about that? Maybe trying to get that happening more often. They love the idea. And then a committee was formed. And then from that, we probably about the following year, we got it going. We got permits from the city of Long Beach to allow us to be on the beach. And then kind of the rest is history.
That's beautiful. It's a wonderful
kind of
story.
Kept rolling. It is. It's really been a great experience. People love it. I love it. It's a big team effort. It takes a lot. You're gathering hundreds of people on the beach. You need to have a sound system that's going to accommodate that. I'm lucky. I have a great crew of very tech savvy people. So they make it happen. Great music. It's been a really awesome experience.
Do you get reactions from non-Catholics who witness Mass and ask questions?
I do. Usually positive. Not always positive. We've had, this would have been earlier on. We don't really get this so much anymore. But we had some people just sort of objecting, they were interpreting as church state, breaching of the two. But that seems to have kind of settled down, and if anything is positive, I think people just it's common to have people. They'll be riding their bike along the boardwalk. They'll be going for a run. They're just hanging out there. See the crowd. They'll stop. They're kind of curious, and then they just if they're non-Catholic or non-Christian, I'd say they're just pleasantly curious. And those who are Catholic, they're just like, oh, this is great. And there's some really, really, really great stories of people, letters I've gotten over the years, people saying, I didn't even know about this. I talked to a guy not too long ago. He said his mother had died a few weeks prior, and he hadn't really been church connected for a long time, and he was struggling with the death of his mother. And somebody here in town said, you ought to think about coming down to this Mass. And he did. And he has never looked back. He's a daily communicant. Like, it's like a crazy success story. Somebody who wasn't even going on Sundays and now is active. He's a leader in a couple of ministries. So I was like, how do you argue with that?
It's a beautiful impact. We're hitting this 1-year mark since the National Eucharistic Revival, where we had processions all around the country. Is this also part of that witness? Do you feel like there's a reinvigoration of the purpose for a Mass like this that really brings our Lord and the Eucharist out in the open to the people?
Yeah, I think so. again, you've got. I mean, this has been great. We've had three Sundays now to kick off the summer, and they've all been. The lowest number was about 1,000 people. I think we had 1,200, 1,300. You know, you get 1,000 people kneeling in the sand during the Eucharistic prayer. You know, and down here it's a beach town, so the boardwalk is like Broadway. I mean, everybody comes here, so there is just a undeniable public dimension to this. Yeah, does it mean that everybody who walks by is inspired? No, but more than a few have been. And the fact that the numbers have kind of steadily increased, I think says, yeah, it's something good is really happening.
Something good is certainly happening. Thank you so much, Father Brian Barr from the Diocese of Rockville Center, New York, and one of the celebrants of the Beach Catholic Sunday Mass on Long Island. Thank you so much for your witness.
Thank you.
And finally, today we celebrate the feast of St. Peter Chrysologus, a bishop and doctor of the Church. St. Peter was born in Italy in the 4th century, and he earned the name Chrysologus, or golden worded, due to his eloquence when speaking of the faith. St. Peter died in the year 450 and was named a doctor of the Church in 1729. St. Peter Chrysologus, pray for us. We thank you for watching tonight. Remember, you can follow us on social media, Facebook, X, and Instagram at EWTN News Nightly. I'm Montse Alvarado. Good night, and God bless you.